Hi everyone. I am the plays the thing, your conscience queen. This is my first video. I am going to streamline this as best I can. This video will show how I get inspired, kind of what research I do a little bit, and how I find resources and inspiration, and then kind of like the final, this is what I got so I can make it work. My next video will be about pattern making. So yeah, let's get into this. So I'm in an Ottoman history class that has been focused, on between 1700s and the fall of the Ottoman Empire after World War I. So I got really into learning about how the Ottoman Empire try to become modernized, because at one point it was kind of adopted into the Western world, and it's like, yeah, you can be part of Europe now. And I thought that was fascinating, and especially when I learned that when the Sultan decreed, okay, everybody has to wear modern clothing. And so people still assume, even by the turn of the century, by the 1900s, people still assumed that women would be wearing, these voluminous harem pants and scantily clad, little bras, and, be lounging everywhere. And that was not the case. And so my final presentation and research paper is all about the combination of East and West in fashion during the 1910s. So I focus on between 1910 and 1914, which is about when the Ottoman Empire really fell. Because that was we got into this war, and that was the worst decision possible. So the reason why I talk about East and West is because, not to go too far down the rabbit hole, but if any of you are at all familiar with Downton Abbey, I have never watched the show personally, but I would like to someday. I just know that it's during that era. It takes place during the 1910s, and I think it's Sybil. I think that's the character's name. Anyway, she wears harem pant evening gown style, and I was kind of fascinated by that. So I looked up, and like, hey, did anyone on YouTube recreate these? And I saw one YouTuber who does do a lot of historical costuming doing that as well. I was like, all right, yeah. So I was really inspired by that. And so I started looking up fashion plates from the 1910s. Excuse me. Excuse me again. Started looking up fashion plates from the 1910s. Looked at magazines, looked at anything that could give me a possible physical pattern to go off of to make my own. And I came up with a whole lot of nothing for a while, until I discovered the Patterns of Fashion books by Janet Arnold, who I believe is a fashion historian, and she actually went through and researched how just the construction of all kinds of garments that are on displays in museums or just part of collections, and I think that's fascinating. And her book, this one is Patterns of Fashion to 1860 to 1940. I mean, just look at this. not only does she give you the dress, she gives you the inside details, and then she goes into great detail about the patterns and how it's made and what, the width of the ribbons, and just goodness. It's amazing. It's incredible. I need to buy a copy of my own. You did not all need to see that information. I'll blur that out later. So I read about, so I looked at that, and that is where I am getting my pattern information, and I'll show you what pattern specifically I'm going to use for my recreation. My recreation is inspired, I should actually bookmark this page too, is actually inspired by this photograph, which I think inspired, if you just type in harem pant illustration, like Edwardian era harem pant illustration, an image from Puck magazine will pop up, and it's a woman wearing something very similar. It's purple and checkered with a giant black hat. So I think that photo inspired that illustration. Anyway, because that one was like the one that always popped up every time I did a search, every single search, mind you, I think, well, you know what, I will nod my head at Poiré, and I will remake this walking, like this everyday wear walking harem pant dress. The actual bookmark is the back, what the back looks like, and I will actually show that to you because it's cool. Except the bookmark, because that has everything. But yes, this lady right here is wearing a hobble skirt while this lady is wearing harem pants. And it's not the thing you think of to see in the 1910s, but it was there. That's what makes me excited. That's why I'm doing the research paper. So, in order to do that, this is the sketch that I came up with for what I'm going to wear. So very similar. I wanted to sketch it out. I wanted to have the back. I kind of wanted to know if I wanted a higher neckline or not, and I just chose the lower one like in the photo. She didn't have checkered right here. She just had white, but since I'm probably going to have to flatline, since I am choosing cotton material instead of linen or wool, and I'm choosing cotton for a couple of reasons. One, because I knew that the colors and the patterns I wanted would probably be printed on cotton. Two, I know that if I'm going to be walking in something and I have to wear layers underneath it, it's still 1914, and even though Paul Poiret got rid of the corset, liberated women from the corset, I still have to wear underwear underneath it. And I still have to walk to class. And three, I wanted something that I knew I could wash and not worry about it falling apart. Not just falling apart, but like losing its sheen, losing its luster, whatever, all those things. So I chose cotton because I do plan on wearing this in the future, because I am going to school to become a history teacher. So I really want to have a very iconic garment to wear when I teach that part of history, whenever that happens in the future. I still have forever to go because I've had 2 babies since I started school, and that has put a lot of my schooling on the brakes. But, one class at a time, it's fine. Anyway, so for what pattern from Janet Arnold I'm using, it is going to be this day dress, which is found in the London Museum. The pattern on the front, the top, is the one that I'm going to be following. Not to the T, of course, but pretty darn close. It has those double sleeves, whatever, peekaboo sleeves. We're going to call them peekaboo sleeves because it makes sense, right? This pattern is poking out peekaboo. I'm not going to add the extra cuff because that's not in the original pattern of the dress that I'm trying to follow. And I am going to shorten the bust line so it actually comes up, you know, to right under the bust instead of at the natural waist. But yeah, that's about it. I did already go and buy my fabric before I made the pattern, but I'm pretty familiar with my own height and measurements, and I knew that I didn't want the pants to be overly voluminous like that back photo that I showed you with the two women walking side by side, because the one in the photo actually looked a little bit more slimmer. So this is more similar to like a modern jumpsuit, but I'm planning on making it, making the top and the bottom separate and then having them connect with hooks and eyes. But for my pattern, I did find a beautiful checkered cotton. I'm probably going to have to flatline it, which for those of you who aren't familiar with flatlining in historical sewing, it just means that you, instead of cutting and making a completely separate garment for a dress, like for the lining of a dress, you actually sew it all onto one thing. And then like if you're doing hemming or whatever, then you can do hand sewing it into that lining material without it showing on the fabric on the front. So that's what I plan on doing since this is cotton and it's a little bit lighter. Yeah. But the nice thing is that, and my solid color for my dress is this beautiful red berry shade. It's still bold, it's still bright, as Paul Poiret would have loved. I don't know, it just felt better than purple or blue like I thought maybe the dress was. Since Paul Poiret was fascinated with bold patterns and bold colors. So that's why I went with that color, because it's red, but it's not fire engine red. It's just a very nice, I just feel like if I use this, it'll look great. Extra things that I'm adding, I will be using this ribbon to go underneath the bust line, probably just to also hide the hooks and eyes, where I've sewed those on. But in the photo, I can't tell what's on the neckline of the cross panels on the chest. I didn't know if it was buttons or what. However, I saw the ribbon I have, and basically all the embellishments I have I know aren't historically accurate, but I feel like it will add something to the garment. So I'm just actually going to add just this beautiful little kind of pearly, little black tulle kind of ribbon to these panels, and probably to the tops of the sleeves as well, just to still give it that historical feeling. This is still the Edwardian era, you know, so women are going to be adding, they still want some frills. They still want their frills. But it's not quite nearly as obnoxious as the early turn of the century. I do plan on putting my hair in a cottage hair bun, as in the cottage loaf style, which is called, you know, where you have the hair bump here and then the bun right there. Yep, still planning on doing that. And if I have leftover fabric, I will use this as a ribbon in my hair. So yeah. Next step is, like I said at the beginning of the video, is pattern making. And I will kind of show you how I make my own patterns, especially to fit me. Know that I am an amateur at all of this. I have had 3 sewing classes in my lifetime. One was 4-H in like 4th grade, and the other 2 were in high school. But I've always loved sewing, and I've always loved costume making, and this is just the first time I've chosen to film it. But yeah, you guys get to join me in this process, and I can't wait to show you the final results. And I have about, well, you know, a little less than 3 weeks to make this, and also finish polishing my paper, and I still have a whole PowerPoint slides presentation I need to make for my presentation. But dang it, the costume counts. I'm talking about fashion. I might as well show up and really make a statement. Also, FYI, I'm the only person in the class not talking about death for their research paper. And my professor actually said that he's really excited about my topic. So yeah, thanks for joining me, and keep working on those projects. You got this. It's long, it's hard, it's tough, but you know what? There's a reason why we craft. It's because we love it, even when it makes us want to pull our hair out. But that's okay. Keep working on those stitches, and I will see you all later.